I was about 21 years old the first time I ever went golfing. And to give you an idea, I was in college, I was an intern, and my internship sent me to live in Montana for a month to kind of learn small town rural ministry and what that would be like to kind of expand my knowledge and understanding experience. And while I was there, I was working with this team of youth pastors, and once a year they get together, and it happened to be during the time I was there. And so they sent us to this conference for youth pastors and pastors to come together. And one of the things that they did while we were there is they took us all golfing. And it was incredible because we were right below Glacier National Park, so the background is just picturesque and amazing. It's beautiful. And the thing was, though, is that they take this really serious. And I'd never golfed before. And so they're asking me, like, hey, what's your handicap? And I honestly, I'm like, I don't get special parking. I don't know, like, what... I don't know what that means. And they're like, okay, so we're going to just put you down as the worst golfer. My name went to the bottom of the list because I never played before. And they pair you up trying to even the teams out. So they're going to pair me. They paired me with one of the best golfers that was there. And I'm like, that's fantastic. That's not intimidating at all. Like, that sounds great. It's really how I want to spend my day. And so I'm really competitive, though. So I'm like, that's fine. I'm probably going to pick it up real easy. It can't be that hard. It's just hitting a ball with a club. Like, how hard can that be, right? So we get out there on the course, and sometimes when you do like a shotgun or a tournament, you do like a shotgun start where everybody starts at the same time, just different holes. This was everybody started at hole one, and because I'm with the best golfers, our team goes first, which means the first guy gets up to the tee box, and he tees up his ball, and he just swings and just hits that thing a mile. I mean, just way out into the fairway, and I'm like, okay, and now they want me to go next, and so I get my ball, and I get my tee. And I go ahead and I tee up just like you do. And I step up to it. I'm not going to hit it, just so you guys know. I'm not. Okay, it's just for illustration purposes only here. Okay. And so I get up there, and I'm taking some practice swings. And I'm a little bit even, because I know some of you golf. And if I were to like show you my swing, you'd be like, that's not good, Tony. But I like you do, like I get up there and I take some practice swings, and I'm just getting a little bit warmed up, doing a little of the stretching and whatnot, just trying to make sure, and I'm convinced, I'm like, again, I've never done this before, but I'm convinced I'm going to do what that last guy did and just send the ball way out there. And so I step up to the tee box and I step up and I'm ready to go. And my partner stops me at that moment and says, whoa, Tony, you need to tee the ball up higher. And he reaches down and he kind of just re-tees my ball up. And he's like, you need to tee it up higher for a drive. You got your driver, it's your big club. You got to tee it up higher. I'm like, okay, fantastic, thank you, because I don't know what I'm doing. And so I go up there and I'm ready. Everyone's watching. And I am ready, and I go up there, and I swing, and I hit that ball so hard that I literally blew it to dust. Just poof, just a puff of smoke in that moment. And I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, and everyone, all 60 other pastors are just laughing at me because my partner played a prank on me, and he teed up my ball with a prank ball that's like made of chalk, so when you hit it, it just turns to dust. I got paired up with like the best guy. He also happened to be the conference speaker, or one of the conference speakers, but not just a speaker, he was the conference entertainment. He was a stand-up comedian, okay? And so for 18 holes that day, I gave him more material to use, okay? Because it was awful, and I was not good at that. But I got up there, and I tee up my ball again, and I'm like, okay, finally, now, no more jokes, right, guys? And I get up there to go hit my first ball, and again, I'm convinced that I'm just going to send this thing a mile. And so I go up there, and I swing, and I hit it so hard to the right, and I just shanked the ball, and it did not go where I wanted it to go, and that's just reality. And here's the thing is that when you understand this, if you've golfed before, every time you tee up the ball, you have an opportunity to send that ball where you want it to go. You have an opportunity to put that ball on the green or down the fairway or on the left side or the right side. You have an idea of where you want the ball to go because you have an opportunity that's been teed up in front of you. And what I want us to think about, and the reason why we're doing this series is because every single day that you wake up, and that I wake up, is we have an opportunity, that life has teed up a ball of opportunity for us every single day that we take breath in the morning. What are we doing with those opportunities? How are we maximizing those opportunities? How can we avoid shanking those opportunities? What can we do to maximize our daily opportunities? And see, sometimes you wake up And it might feel like, because of circumstance or situation, you might feel like, I have a great opportunity that's been teed up in front of me. Like a significant, like this could change everything for you. It could change your future. It could change your pocket, your bank account. It could change, it could change the trajectory of your future. Some days, though, we wake up and it's just same old, right? It's another day of going to work and grinding it out. It's another day of parenting and not knowing what we're doing. It's another day of just the same old. And that's the opportunity in front of us. And what do we do with it? And perhaps we're letting some of life's greatest opportunities that get caught up in some of the little details sometimes, but we're actually letting them pass us by because we're not looking at them as an opportunity that's been teed up. We're just kind of letting it happen. So how can we maximize and take advantage of opportunities? And I wonder, if you are here today and you are a follower of Jesus, if you're here today and you say, I've put my trust and my faith in Jesus, then I wonder, how could our faith play a part in helping us maximize opportunity? How could our faith play a part in not letting us miss opportunity? If you're not a follower of Jesus, you're kicking the tires of faith, you're here because a friend invited you, or for whatever reason, I just want you to know that we always, every single weekend when we gather, we want this so much to be a safe place for you. A safe place for anyone at any point in their faith journey or their walk of life to be here and consider the claims of Jesus along with us. And we're not going to poke and prod you to do it a certain way. We want this to be a safe place for you to find and follow Jesus. But we do believe that Jesus wants to transform your life, wants to add value to your life, wants to add purpose to your life, wants to help send your life in a direction that you really want it to go. There's an opportunity in front of you, and Jesus wants to play a part in that. And so I wonder, though, if you're a follower of Jesus, how does our faith play a part in helping us maximize opportunity? This is really nice. It's like I have a walking stick up here, and I'm a little under the weather this weekend, so if I feel like I'm out of breath, it's not because I've been like golfing. It's just because I am out of breath. Have you ever felt like you've had an opportunity and you've just missed it? Like you let an opportunity just pass you by? Maybe it was a career. Maybe you could have said yes to a certain job, but you didn't, and you've always kind of kicked yourself, man, if I just would have moved. Or you didn't go to the school you really wanted to go to. Maybe you have like a relational missed opportunity, a misconnection, Like, wow, I really hit it off with that person, but I didn't have the guts to ask them out. And you let an opportunity pass you by. Maybe you have a stock market missed opportunity. Like, if I only would have bought Bitcoin in 2012, right? If I only would have sold, or if I only would have bought, maybe you have different missed opportunity. What if we don't have to miss opportunities? And I don't mean that we can predict the future. And I don't mean that we can do everything all the time or be everywhere all at once. It's not like that. But what if we didn't have to miss the opportunities that were in front of us that were actually really important to us, that are maybe really important to our value system, that were really important to who we hope to be in the future and what we want for ourselves and our family? What if God plays a part in teeing up opportunities in front of you in your life? And what if you didn't have to ever miss a God opportunity in your life? Wouldn't that be awesome? That's what I want to. I don't want to miss out. But there's things that cause us to miss out on opportunities all the time. And so I wonder, even if you were to pause right now and think about what are the opportunities that have been teed up, so to speak, in front of me at this point in my life, today, right now. And maybe they might seem significant, like game changers for your life. And maybe they might just seem like, I've got kids at home, just need to love them every single day really well. What are the opportunities that have been teed up? What are the Jesus-like opportunities that are in front of you? And perhaps God has given you a chance to do something incredible with them, giving you a chance to not miss out. And so this question of why do we miss opportunities? There's a lot of reasons why. I did some research. A lot of reasons why people miss out on opportunities, why they don't take the risk, why they don't step forward or step up to the tee box, so to speak. The number one reason, though, we're going to talk about a few different reasons over this month of this series, but the number one reason why we miss out on opportunity, you know what it is? It's fear. Fear. It's fear. This is in your notes. Fear is the number one reason. It keeps us back. It holds us back. Why? Why does fear do this to us? Why does fear plague us? Well, fear causes us to tell ourselves a handful of things. We tell ourselves things like, well, I'm just not good enough. Of course I'm not going to take that step. Of course I'm not going to pursue that opportunity. I'm not good enough. It's not going to happen for me. I'm not good enough. Or maybe it's not good enough, but we say to ourselves, I'm not smart enough. If I tried to do that, if I actually took that step, people would see right through me because they'd recognize that I'm not an expert in this. It's imposter syndrome, if you've ever experienced that. I'm not smart enough, so of course I'm not going to take that opportunity. I'm not there yet. I'm not at that level. Maybe we just simply, it boils down to this, where we simply say, if I take this opportunity, if I take this step, I could fail. I could fail. And who wants to fail? Who wants to fail? It's the last thing for so many of us. We do not want to fail. We do not want to be a failure. And so, heck, let's just play it safe. Let's not take the step forward. Let's not take the risk. It's not worth it because I could fail. And so fear keeps us back from taking that step to pursue that opportunity. Fear holds us back from pursuing that thing that we might feel so passionate about and important. And this is actually one of our values, but yet fear cripples us from taking it. What's fascinating to me is that if you're a follower of Jesus, that there's another little F word that should play a part in this as well. And that's the word faith. Even as followers of Jesus, we still have fear. Fear still holds us back. But this component of faith should allow us to take steps forward. This component of faith should allow us to move towards those opportunities because we have faith. Because faith, in contrast to fear, faith says things like I can trust. I don't know the outcome. I can't predict the outcome, but I can trust that God is good and there's a way forward for me. And so we can step forward. Faith says things like, I can have hope. I have hope. I don't have to see how it all plays out, but I have hope for better days ahead. I have hope that God is for me. I have hope for what is ahead for my future. I can take this step in this direction because I can see why, and I have hope that it helps. Faith says things like, it's worth the risk. Faith says things like, it's worth the risk. It's worth it. It's worth it to not stay stuck. It's worth it to not stay stagnant. It's worth it to actually take the risk, to take the steps in the direction that you really want your life to go, right? It's worth it. And what I want us to do today is I want us to look at an example of this, a story from the Old Testament in Scripture about the opportunity that is in front of a whole group of people. Okay, there's a specific story. This story is from the Old Testament, and it's actually covered over many chapters and multiple books in the Old Testament, but we're going to look at it and just we're going to summarize it, and then we're going to jump into one specific part of the story where we can see how both fear and faith play a part. They're both influencing the ability for these people to take the opportunity that has been teed up in front of them. Okay, so this story, it starts with a guy named Moses, which if you have no Bible background, that's okay. Moses is, contrary to what you might think, it's not from Central Washington. He doesn't have a lake. But Moses is this very key figure in the Old Testament. And Moses is used by God to do something specific. He's used by God to set the Hebrew people free from slavery in the nation of Egypt. And so there's the Hebrew people. Moses miraculously sets them free. They are fleeing Egypt. And while they're fleeing, Egypt has now sent their armies out to pursue them, to take them down. And they get caught between the armies and the Red Sea. And then God miraculously opens up the Red Sea. And these Hebrew people, this Israelite nation, they cross through on dry ground. And now they're separate and they're safe from the Egyptian people. And they're now in the wilderness. They're in the desert. They're in desolate places. They're in no place to call home. And so they're looking at what is next for them. What is their next opportunity that is in front of them? And so the thing is that there was this promise. There was these prophetic things that were said long before they ever left Egypt, decades before, centuries before they were ever found themselves in this predicament, about this promise of this land that they would inhabit and inherit one day. And this land is actually called what Scripture often calls the promised land. And it is good land. It says it's land flowing with milk and honey, which many of us today, we're like, I don't drink milk. It's not culturally acceptable anymore to drink milk. Why would I want to live there, right? Is it almond milk? Is it oat milk? What kind of milk is this milk? But this is the land that they're supposed to inhabit, land of milk and honey. What's it mean? It just means it is fertile, agriculturally rich land that could sustain a nation. Only problem was it already was sustaining some nations. And now they're supposed to go inhabit it. So Moses rallies together 12 men, 12 spies, this small band of brothers, and he sends them across the Jordan River into the promised land as spies to scout it out and for them to come back and bring a report on what it was like. Is this really as good as it sounds? And so this is what they do, is they head out. They see the land, they see the armies, they see the nations, the fortified cities, the different things that are there. They see the agriculture, the grapes that are like big as your fist. They see how rich the land is, and they come back and they bring report to Moses. They come back and they tell Moses some recommendation of how he should proceed. And 10 of the 12 men come back and they're like, Moses, I'm so glad you sent us out there because we're going to avoid a whole lot of hurt. Moses, we cannot move forward. Moses, we cannot. They are fortified. It is not worth the risk. We are too weak. They are too strong. The opportunity is not worth it, Moses. It's far too dangerous. What is that? It's fear, 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 fear. It's holding them back. 10 out of the 12 men felt that way. 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, they're like, what? Did they see what we saw? This is the promised land. This is the land that God has promised to us. This is the land flowing with milk and honey. This land is rich with agriculture. This land will make a great home for us. Moses, we can't move backwards. Moses, God is too big. This is too great of an opportunity. We have to move forward, Moses. What are they doing? They're operating in faith, 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 faith. Moses, look at the opportunity that is in front of us. I want to just pause, like a little timeout real quick. Just some sidebar thoughts that run through Tony's head as he's preparing a message like this to give you insight into kind of some things that I think about. This opportunity that was in front of Joshua and Caleb to take and occupy the promised land, it's with faith. It's by faith that they knew that God was with them. It's by faith they knew that they could do this. And in their ancient world, where in a time and place in world history where it was marked by might makes right, it made sense that God being with them meant that we are going to go, we're going to move in, we're going to wage war, we're going to conquer, and we're going to occupy this promised land. And it's so easy for us to read these stories, and especially if you're a follower of Jesus, like, yes, Joshua, Caleb, that's incredible, you did this. And we forget at what cost it came with. We forget about the lives that were lost. And I know you can say, well, yeah, but God has a promise for Israel. But this occupying this promised land came at incredible loss to other nations and other people. And you can say, well, they didn't love God, they didn't follow God. Again, in an ancient world where might makes right, this made sense that God moving forward meant we're going to occupy and we're going to conquer. But an incredible loss to soldiers, but not just the ones fighting, but loss to families and loss to kids. Lost to entire generations of families. But this is the opportunity that was in front of Joshua and Caleb. And this is what made sense to them and for their nation to go and take this land. And I want you to know that it was generations later that this same nation, this Israelite nation, also birthed forth a Messiah. One that they were waiting for. One that was going to do some things and set some things straight. And in a culture and a time in history where strength was in numbers and where power was forged by conquering over people, Jesus, this Messiah, was born. And Jesus, this Messiah, he came in and he revealed a different way. He revealed a better way. And he says, my kingdom that I'm building is not a kingdom of this world. And then he invites them and he invites you and he invites us in to participate in this kingdom. And I say that because at a time of political unrest and a political climate on a global scale where war is being waged, it's so easy for Christians to rally behind the faith of Joshua and Caleb, saying, yes, let's take what's ours, let's keep what's ours, let's protect it all cost. It's so easy for us to have that mindset of Joshua and Caleb. And we forget sometimes what makes us distinctly Christian in the first place. We forget Jesus. And that Jesus came and he taught of a different way. He taught of a different type of love, a different type of ethic in how we live our life. Jesus makes it clear that we live in a world where God is for all people, of all nations. We live in a world where God looks at all people as his image bearers, and Jesus makes it clear that that's the way we are to see people as well. He calls us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. He calls us to love our enemies at cost to ourselves. So what do we do in a time when war is being waged and so many Christians want to take up this banner of pray for Israel? Pray for Israel. But I wonder, at what point do our prayers start to look and sound like Jesus, who's been hung on a cross and nailed through his hands and his feet? And he says these words, Father, Forgive them. Forgive the enemies. Forgive the ones doing this to me. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. At what point do our prayers advocate for peace? At what point do our prayers advocate for those who are experiencing loss and hurt at the hands of worldly kingdoms? I think as followers of Jesus, that's where we spend our time in prayer. That's where we advocate. That's where we speak to hope and where we walk forward in faith. So here it is. Moses has a decision to make. 10 guys say, don't do it. 2 guys say, do it. You know what Moses does? Fear. And he didn't do it. He didn't do it. And as an outcome of that, they're to wait 4 decades, 40 years, for an entire generation to die off before they would ever go and pursue this promised land. And now, still wandering in the wilderness, Moses has passed, Moses has died, and Joshua is still there. Joshua and Caleb are said to actually be the only 2 that survived, the only 2 from that generation. And they're old men now, and Joshua is left in charge, and he finally gets to do what he knew they could have done all along. And so this is the opportunity that's been teed up in front of Joshua. And we're going to look at this in Joshua chapter 1. This is how Joshua's book of the Bible starts. It says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide. So this is what God says to Joshua here. He says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land that I'm about to give them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. God is giving Joshua a very good reason to have faith here, right? I will never leave you nor forsake you. And then he says to Joshua, he says, be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. He goes on, he says, be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Keep this book of the law of Moses always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So Joshua, he ordered his officials of the people. He says, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go to take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. Joshua has received very clear instruction about the opportunity that's been teed up in front of him. And so he's got some things he has to do to prepare for this. He has to prepare the people, to take care of them, to get them ready, to make provisions for them, right? But multiple times in this, he gets some very specific instruction that gets repeated here, and it's to be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. See, Joshua, he had this huge opportunity that's in front of him to do something that these people have been hoping and waiting to be done for decades, to lead the people over to the other side of the river to this promised land. And for 40 years, Joshua had been waiting for this moment. And it's his turn to step up to the tee box, to step up and take a swing at it. He's finally in charge, and he gets to make the call, and God has told him to go. And the thing is, it's like 40 years ago, this was an easy call for Joshua. He knew exactly what to do. He knew the opportunity that was in front of him. He knew how to swing up. He knew how to approach it. He knew what to do to make it happen. He lived by faith. He wasn't afraid. But something's happened over the last 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, that something has shifted maybe for Joshua, that God has to kind of instruct him, to kind of light a fire under him to say, this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to happen. And Joshua, hear this, because I don't think you're getting it. Joshua, I need you now more than ever to be strong and to be courageous. See, what might have been easy for Joshua 40 years earlier when he was a young man, maybe over time, he's a little bit leery of risk. He doesn't want to take the risk. It might not be worth it for him. Maybe over time, he's not sure that he can trust. I mean, they've been wandering for 40 years with real no place to call home. And so is this really going to work out? Am I going to succeed? Should I be afraid of failure here? Maybe his zealousness as a young man is worn off, right? And so Joshua, he's told in these moments, not once, not twice, but 3 times, to be strong and courageous. The best way for them to move forward in faith is for Joshua. Joshua, you need to build up your courage because you've got an opportunity that's been teed up in front of you. And if you don't have the courage to be able to take this, Joshua, you're never going to step up to the plate and do it. Joshua, we need to work on your courage right now. See, sometimes what keeps us pursuing from opportunities is not a lack of knowledge. We know enough. It's not always a lack of skill. Like, you're good enough. It's not a lack of money. We have enough. But what can keep us from some of the best things and best opportunities in life is our lack of courage to take the steps necessary, to actually step forward and take the risk. And courage doesn't have to mean like a blind faith, like where you have no reasonable level of trust to say, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to do it because, heck, God's big, and I just hope it works out. Like, courage doesn't have to mean like a blind faith. It can mean taking into account all the things that you are aware of and all the things you know and all the things you know about yourself and others and about God and saying, God, I'm going to trust you to move forward. God, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to make provisions for the people. I'm going to get them ready. In fact, Joshua enlisted other armies to go ahead of them. God, like he did his part, but he said also, God, I am going to trust and I am going to move forward. Courage isn't meant to be a blind faith, but it's walking by faith with both eyes open, knowing the risk, but having the guts to see your faith play out, to take a swing at it. And real practically here, just because I think if fear is the thing that keeps us back from opportunity, let's talk about courage. Let's talk about it in a very practical way. What is courage? By definition, this is one definition of courage, is it's the quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty, danger, pain, etc., without fear. You might not have ever thought about this before, but there's actually 6 different types of courage. 6 different types of courage. Let's look at them. These are in your notes. You can write them down. There's physical courage. This is probably what most of us think of when we think of courage. It's that bravery at the risk of bodily harm. It's running into a burning building as a firefighter. It's facing an enemy on a battlefield. It's undergoing chemotherapy. It's climbing a mountain. It's protecting a child from a dangerous animal. That's like physical courage. The cyclist Lance Armstrong, he says this. He says, if you worried about falling off the bike, you'd never get on, right? Because we're afraid of physical harm. So physical courage says, I'll step up. John Wayne says, courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyways. Physical courage also involves recognizing that your body is how you often participate in the world. So keeping it healthy, strong, and resilient, it prepares you for all kinds of challenges, not just physical ones. The second one is there's a social courage. Social courage it's very familiar to most of us as it involves the risk of social embarrassment or exclusion, unpopularity, rejection. It also involves even leadership. Social courage means not conforming to the expectations of others, being willing to show your true self, even if it means risking social disapproval or punishment. It means being able to express opinions and preferences without checking to see if they are in line with everyone else's opinions and preferences. Winston Churchill says this about social courage. He says, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. The third one is moral courage. This involves doing the right thing, particularly when risks involve shame, opposition, or the disapproval of others. And so here we enter into ethics and integrity, the resolution to match word and action with values and ideals. It's not about who we claim to be to our children or to others, but who we reveal ourselves to be through our words and our action. This is moral courage. Moral courage requires that we rise above the apathy, complacency, hatred, cynicism, and fear-mongering in our political systems, socioeconomic divisions, and cultural, religious differences. Moral courage requires that we rise above the apathy and complacency and the hatred, that we get above these things. The fourth is emotional courage. Emotional courage, this type of courage opens us up to feeling the full spectrum of positive emotions at the risk of encountering negative emotions. It is strongly correlated with happiness. Our emotions are an evolutionary adaptation to help support our survival. So emotional courage is being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be truthful, and aware of your conscious experience of core emotions, which you think about and express often in language. We say these are our feelings. There's fifth one is intellectual courage. Intellectual courage means being willing to grapple with difficult or confusing concepts and ask questions. Being willing to struggle to gain understanding and risk making mistakes. Sometimes what we learn challenges previously accepted ideas or contradicts teachings from our family or our upbringing or a certain cultural group. It means discerning and telling the truth. There's a guy named John Kenneth Galbraith. He's an author and economist in the 50s, and he says it like this. He says, the conventional view, it serves to protect us from the painful job of thinking. There's a courage that comes from being intellectual and thinking deeper. And then finally, there's a spiritual courage. Spiritual courage, it fortifies us as we ask the questions about purpose and meaning. Spiritual courage means being able to be available to the deepest questions about why we're here, about what is my life for? Do I have a purpose? And that we all must call upon our spiritual courage when we consider our own mortality. Spiritual courage means opening ourselves to our own vulnerability and the mysteries of life. Is there more to this life than just this life? Spiritual courage allows us to pursue those answers. So I wonder, how's your courage? And I wonder, where in life is maybe courage holding you back, or the lack thereof courage? Where is it holding you back? A lot of you, when I hold up this driver, you're familiar with it, you've seen it, maybe you've golfed yourself or you golf avidly, right? You've seen it, but some of you are like, I've never really golfed, and I know what that is, but I've never even held one. But I think all of us can relate to this one. A little putt-putt, okay? All of us have probably played putt-putt a time or two in our lives, right? When I was 11 or maybe 12 years old, I went to a putt-putt range course, kind of Wonderland Golf and Games on the north side. And I went there with my stepbrother, and we're playing putt-putt golf. He's a couple years older than me, and I don't know about you, but I'm really competitive, and I don't suck at putt-putt, okay? This is like my time to shine. And I think he was getting a little frustrated with me because my score was better than his. And every time, like with putt-putt, you take your ball, and you start on that little pad at the very beginning, and you set it down, and you line it up. And this is a crazy course, like all sorts of bends and turns and rocks and rivers and things you little cross, it's all just fun. And every time he would take his ball and he'd set it down, he had to go first every single time. And I'm like, okay, but in golf, I know enough to know that whoever got the lowest score is supposed to go first. And but he will not let me go first. And finally, on the 13th hole, he sets his ball down. I'm like, no, you've been taking my ball, kind of hitting it aside every time when I've tried to go first. And so I take his ball, I take his ball, and I just go dink, and I push it aside, and I put my ball down, and I go to line up. And he comes over, he picks up my ball, and he throws it across the course into the pond. I'm like, what in the world? And so as he throws my ball, I'm not exaggerating here. He throws my ball, and I'm like, what? And I take my little rubber putter here, and I go like this, and I kind of like push him back, like get away from me, get away from the starting spot. And in that moment, he took his rubber putter, and he used it like an axe, and he went over his head, and as I turned from him, he hit me on the back of the head. And I walked away holding my hand. I'm crying. I have a hat on. And so I didn't even take off my hat. And someone asked me, a stranger, an adult man, he says, is it bad? I'm like, well, yeah, it's bad. My stepbrother just hit me over the head with a club, like his rubber putter. Like of course it's bad. But he could see blood coming down my arm. And so at that point, I take my arm, and I'm like, oh, it is bad. And I get taken to the hospital, and I have to get 6 stitches and a large gash on the back of my head. Now, here's the thing. The reason why I tell this story is we're out there just having fun. And yet, I didn't even recognize that this was a dangerous sport. But do you know what that's done for the rest of my life? Every single time. This summer I played putt-putt at summer camp with the students many times with my own kids. I played many, and I kid you not, every single time I take this ball and I set it down, I remember that moment. Every hole, every time. And sometimes I set it down, and even when I get up, I wince a little bit of like, what if something hits me in the back while I stand up? What if I don't see it coming? I just wonder, like, what are the opportunities that we miss out on because fear actually holds us back? And maybe for good reason, because last time you tried it, it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. For good reason, because last time, someone that you thought you could trust and thought you could confide in, they burnt you. They hurt you. What happened when fear holds us back from pursuing the opportunities in your life? Chances are you're like me, and you can recognize some different opportunities you have, whether it's about your career and financial and your bank account, whether it's about your retirement, whether it's about if you're a parent like I am, and you think of opportunities you have with your kids at the age that you're at, 'cause you only have limited amount of Saturdays left for them before they're out of the house, potentially forever. What would it mean if you could just be intentional to look at the opportunities you have teed up in front of you and say, you know what, I have fear and I'm inadequate and I'm not always smart enough or good enough, and I fear, but my faith says, you know what, I'm going to be the dad that my kids need. And I'm going to be the person of integrity. I'm going to work hard to achieve the things that I want to achieve. And I'm going to go after the goals and go after the dreams and not let fear keep causing me to take steps backward or causing me to remain idle. Why? Because as someone who lives by faith, I'm going to take a step forward. And I'm going to take a step into the tee box and recognize it's my turn to take a swing. And I don't know the outcome, and I don't know if it's going to shank or go out straight where I want it to go. But if I never swing, I never know. What would it look like for you to not let fear hold you back, but take advantage of the opportunities? In fact, there was a point where Jesus, I think it's like he knew this. He knew this was going to be a struggle for us. He knew that fear was going to hold us back. See, fear and faith kind of contrast each other, where fear is very real. And I'm not saying you don't have fear or it's bad to have fear, but faith helps you take a step of courage in the face of that fear. Faith helps us keep moving forward. And at one point, Jesus says this. He says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace, because in this world you will have trouble. Following Jesus doesn't mean you live a trouble-free life that's all like rainbows and butterflies. In this world you will have trouble, but Jesus says, take heart, because I've overcome the world. It's like he knew that we were going to wrestle with fear. It's like he knew that people were going to hurt us in life at times, and it caused us to not want to trust again, not want to have hope again, not want to take the risk again. But I wonder, what's it look like for you to follow Jesus in the opportunities in your life? And are you letting faith lead or fear? Are you letting faith guide you to the next right step, or fear just hold you back and keeping you idle altogether? Let's pray together. God, right now, as we think about the opportunity that has been teed up in our lives, God, the ways that you have given us opportunity, the ways that you've given us exposure, the things that are in front of us, God, and they might seem big or they might seem mundane, I don't know. But God, would you help us to see what's the next right step of faith for me right now with the opportunities I'm facing? And God, when we recognize the areas where maybe for good reason we have some fear, but God, could we also hand that to you and say, God, this happened and it hurt and it's real. But God, I don't want fear to limit me. So God, I give this to you. And would you help guide and lead in my life? And God, for some of us, we just need to say, God, I give you my life. Would you not just guide and lead? God, would you be the leader and Lord of my life? And I want to take this opportunity right now to say, God, I surrender to you, because I, on my own, left to my own vices, I keep getting it wrong. I keep shanking it. But God, I want to follow you. And I want to learn to love myself, and I want to learn to love others the way that you have. Thank you for loving me. God, for each one of us, would you lead us? And would you guide us? Would you give us not a spirit of fear or timidity, but a sound mind to follow you for all the days of our life. In Jesus' name, amen.